So this just came out yesterday. This is the kind of new batch of Edward Snowden leaks. Again, I don't think that this is particularly surprising, but it connects with some interesting uh, stuff that was actually revealed back, I think, in 2004, that around the lead up to the invasion of Iraq. But basically, the government communication headquarters, which is the UK equivalent of the NSA, set up extensive spying operations on delegates attending the G20 summit in 2009 in London. And as you know, we remember that was a really big summit because that was basically like, Obama was coming to Europe. He had just, pretty recently been elected. The world economy was imploding, and Gordon Brown, who was in major political trouble then as the UK Prime Minister, was really staking his political future on the kind of success of this summit. So I'll just read a few quotes from the article. Foreign officials who took part in the G20 summit meetings in London in 2009 had their computers monitored and their phone calls intercepted on the instruction of their British government hosts. And here's how they did it. They set up internet cafes where they used email encryption programs and key logging software to spy on delegates' uses of computers. They penetrated the security on delegates' BlackBerries to monitor their emails and phone calls. They supplied 45 analysts with an around-the-clock summary of who was phoning who at the summit, and they targeted the Turkish finance minister and possibly 15 other people in his party. And then the document suggests that the operation was sanctioned at the highest levels, and they, it was very, very extensive, and that the information was regularly passed on to ministers. Now, and I just think this is fascinating because I think when we think about something like the G20 summit, it's kind of like, oh my God, they all show up, they all have a big meal, they all come in their motorcades, and they release, occasionally some important policy, but it's a lot of kind of pomp and circumstance. And, if you're interested in that sort of thing, fine. But this is actually, what's going on around it. This reminded Juan Cole, who we had on last week, of a report from 2009, which is even more explosive than this, actually, which is that the British and American governments, the Blair and Bush governments, were spying on top UN officials and UN delegations in the lead up to the invasion of Iraq. And actually, one cabinet member in Tony Blair's government who resigned because of the invasion, she revealed that while in the cabinet, she'd seen transcripts of Kofi Annan's telephone calls. He's the former UN Secretary General. And it turns out that whenever, you remember Hans Blix, who was the UN weapons inspector in Iraq, whenever he was on calls, his cell phone was monitored. Blix was under surveillance, and transcripts of his calls were shared among the U.S., UK, Australia, and Canada. And this put some weight to Blix's claim he had been the subject of a political smear campaign, which is another thing that people like Bill are really minimizing with this stuff. I mean, the notion that there isn't political consequences of this type of monitoring seems kind of naive at best. And then the other aspect of those revelations from 2004, which kind of work in the opposite direction, is it belies even more how dishonest Bush and Blair were being about WMDs, because that would mean that they would be even more privy to the conversations that Blix and Annan and other monitors were having, showing that, Iraq was not in possession of those weapons. So I think, and it's amazing because there's another G20, there's another summit happening right now.
Yeah.
And this is like another, the hacking thing was timed right before the meeting with the new Chinese premier, and this is, timed right before the summit in the UK. So that's interesting stuff. And I go to Juan Call's website and look up the previous reporting he cited around the lead up to Iraq invasion. This stuff is very, it's very real. It's definitely a, part of how politics gets done.